I'm just gonna go briefly into who LEAP is. So LEAP's mission really is just to equip all our students with the knowledge, the skills, and the connections to really bridge that gap between high school and post-secondary. LEAP stands for Learn, Empower, Assist, and Prepare. So we just really want to provide you guys with the resources such as these our webinar series, and then also our mentorship programs, all these resources to really help you guys transition to post-secondary and just really have like a really unforgettable experience. Okay, so let's introduce our Academics 101 panelists. So Hodo, you can go ahead.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to finally join everyone and actually see everything come into action and to play. So I'm excited for this hour and to hopefully give as much information as I can. My name is Hodo. I am a recent graduate at York University. I just completed my undergrad in psychology, but I also had the time to coincide a degree in education. So I fortunately decided that I want to go back into education and be a teacher myself. So I've implemented my passion there, and my goal is to further help you guys really answer the ambiguous questions that are out there so that when you do transition into university, you actually have some sort of stepping stone going in and moving forward. So I hope to answer as many questions as I can that is out there for this hour, and I'm excited to provide my feedback and my stories and my experiences along the way.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Hodo. Okay, so next up we have is Mindy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mindy. I recently graduated from the Honors Life Science program at McMaster, and in the fall, I'll be going into my Master's of Public Health at U of T. I've done this for 4 years, so I know how hard the transition to university can be, and even during university, there were a lot of questions and a lot of time where I was like, how do I study? How do I study best? And everything works differently for every person. So I'm happy to share what worked for me and what worked for some of my friends and help you through this journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Mindy. Okay, so next up we're going to have is Jing Yang. Yan?
Hi everyone, I hope you guys are doing well today. My name is Jing Yan. I'm going into my 4th year at the Ivy Business School. And this summer I'm currently working at OTPP as a strategy and business management analyst. I'm really excited to be here speaking to you guys. I have to echo what Mindy and Hodo have already said. I think there is a huge transition going from high school to university, so hopefully I can help answer some people's questions and make that process a little bit easier. And hopefully you'll feel a little bit more prepared going into post-secondary.
Awesome, thank you, Jing Yan. Next up we have is Anson.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. So my name is Anson. I'm going into my 2nd year at Western University for medical sciences. You know what, same thing. I know what it feels like to go into 1st year. It can be a really scary place, so hopefully my experiences can help you out.
Awesome, thank you, Anson. So next up we have is, okay, so our panel, we're going to go into our panel discussion. So first off, we're going to do our assessments section. So what kind of assessments are there? You know, how long are the assessments and how often are the assessments? You know, how are they really? That goes up to Hodo and Mindy. Any of you guys can go first.
Okay, I want to start off by really having a story to share of my own. Something that I've noticed is that I went into university with a lot of friends. So I went to York University and I went into that program with a lot of friends who were in different academic backgrounds. And one thing that we noticed coming together is that when it came down to assessments, the transition between high school and university differs based on the idea of what the outcome is. So let me break that down for you. When you're in high school, for instance, or even elementary, you can go way back there, teachers often give assessments to progress your learning. So it's an opportunity for us to see where you are at a pace of learning, and then we can further add on to it. So for instance, we have diagnostics in high school. The best example I can have there is the math test to show what you know, and from there the teacher then assesses the lesson. However, in university, there's this idea of summative assessments, and it's practically where the professor provides the information for you, and gives you the information to then for you to reflect upon. So then when it comes down to summative assessments, it's more so, what information did you learn from? There really, in my opinion, I felt as though there wasn't a lot of learning and progression in the sense of, I'm going to stop you halfway through for assessment. It's rather, I'm going to show you the information or the readings per se, and the assessment may be in an exam form or even in a paper form to then show the professor what you know, rather than what I don't know and how can I help you in that sense. Mindy, I'm not sure if you want to take over from there.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. If they find that, you know, the class didn't do too well, no, it's not going to be like high school where they're going to be like, okay, they don't know this topic well, so we're going to go over it again. Typically, usually they just move on, and if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. That's kind of just how university courses work, and they'll generally have multiple assessments throughout the year, in the form of midterms, exams, and then typically like assignments, projects, labs, things like that, just to give you a mark at the end of the day. So it's a lot less hands-on, in my opinion. Maybe that's just because I'm in a STEM field and we had really big classes, so there was less of an opportunity to adjust as you went. But yeah, I do agree with that.
And it's good to see that from the STEM point of view, from my point of view as an undergrad student going into psychology, it was more theoretical based. And what that means in this sense is there was a lot of readings that we did for us to internalize and question what's there. So our assessments were mainly, when it came down to exams, it was more so, we have the information presented to us, so the readings that we do, the topics that we're learning about in psychology, and it's more so, how can I further analyze and how can I best showcase my thinking skills to my professor, rather than me applying my knowledge in a sense. And I'm just talking from the basis of first year. Later on, if anybody is interested in honor psychology, stick to it. Hang on tight for the theory-based work, because when you do go into fourth year, it's more applicable. And then now the sense you feel as though you are the psychologist in the sense that you have your case study and you have your specialization that you're interested in, and then you can apply everything that you've learned in first and second year in terms of the logic behind the theory and apply it towards your interests later on.
Oh shit! I think I went to pee and then I forgot. I'll do it.
Anyways, okay, awesome. Thank you so much for that. That was very comprehensive. So just like you guys already briefly touched upon a little bit upon this, but like, how do these assessments compare to high school, you know, in terms of the marking scheme, the difficulty, you know, what the content, as Hodo said, it's a little bit more application based. You are definitely taught to really be that person. You're going into that field of career, really. So yeah.
I think what was different for me was in high school, you got to know who your teacher was, and you got to know what they're expecting from you and the answers. Whereas if you're, for me at least, in the STEM field, and your first lecture is like 500 people, you don't really get to know your teacher. You don't know how they're going to mark. You don't know what they're expecting you to write. So that was a difficult part for me, which is why the first midterm I found for most first years was so difficult, because we hadn't adjusted to the professor yet at that point. So if I would give any advice, it's to definitely figure out how your teacher or your professor asks questions and what they expect from you as a student answering their test questions.
And in addition to that, like, that's something that I also learned too. You go in with typically a lot of students in a lecture. In my sense, coming from York, there was often classes that I took where we were dissected and further put into tutorial groups. And the best thing to combat what Mindy said, I would suggest, is professors may be busy people, but right at the start of the year, when we do get our syllabus, the first thing they say are, here are my office hours, here is my email, whatnot. Schedule an interview time. They're like, at the end of the term, sometimes professors would joke about that and say, I just twiddle my fingers during the office hours and nobody comes for help. If not, and sometimes, like I said, professors may be busy. When you are set into tutorial groups, get to know your TAs. they are also quite helpful people. First year, there's always this idea of being in your tutorial. So when I mean tutorial, I just mean like a smaller section of people. So perhaps it's like a classroom of like 20 individuals that were who took the same lecture as you. And the TA would provide the readings for that class. And when it came down, when students didn't do the readings, what are you going to do for the hour? The TA provides further questions to help you guys out, to instigate conversation amongst all of us, right? It isn't more so a teacher-based classroom where the TA would come and say, class, today we're going to be writing on the board, our learning goal is this, and here is our paperwork for today, and you guys have to get that work done. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time that could happen, but for majority of the experiences coming from university, in my opinion, was more so we start a conversation based on what we've read in the class. And afterwards, TAs, pack up their stuff and decide to walk out, walk with them. I mean, I think that's where I got the best help from if I didn't understand something, is just, just have a conversation with them after while they're walking. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think like going into your first year, you don't know a lot, that they're going to give you just like a bunch of papers for you to like look over, and just like you're going to have to read that, and there's a lot of expectations that are not really well known to you. So definitely I agree with that. So let's move on to our second one. So how many days in advance should you start studying? And that goes also to Hodo and Mindy as well.
Yeah, I think this depends on who you, like, how you study. Some people I know study really fast. They retain everything from lecture, they study really fast. But a lot of people, including me, study really slowly. And I needed to personally break my study period down, in which I was studying for small periods for a longer period of time, if that makes sense. So I would usually, for a test, start at least 4 or 5 days earlier, just so that I had time to like figure out what I knew, go over things that I didn't know, and I had time to reach out to professors or TAs if I had questions, because you can't expect to ask them questions on the last day or the day before the test and have them answer, because they're probably flooded at that point. So I always gave myself ample time to make sure that I was going through the content thoroughly, and I had time to answer questions if I needed, or ask questions if I had questions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask this question to Hodo too. So like, how long should you be studying for an exam, in the sense like how do I know I'm ready for this exam really?
So this goes back to when I actually started. I'm a procrastinator. I'm going to say that up front. For me, I can't study in groups and I can't make schedules like that. But I did learn to be more disciplined throughout university. And one thing I learned is in theory-based courses that I've taken, professors often give course reviews where they have practical questions or theoretical questions that may apply on the exam or may not. And my best advice to all of you guys is to take the time and actually answer the questions on the course review. I'm not saying you have to do it on your own. I mean, like when we say study in groups, or you can study in groups, like I've done it before, but what I've done is made friends within my tutorial class. And what we would used to do is we would set up a Google Doc that would have the course review set up. And we would separate it in a way that where the questions eventually would all get answered amongst the 5 of us, the 6 of us, so that when it came down time to exam, we really didn't need to meet up with people to ask these questions, but we would have some sort of piece of information that would be helpful for us. And like Mindy said too, take that time to create ample amount so you can go to the professor and ask the questions that you don't. And I mean, the university is busy and the buildings are far and life is busy. So I mean, take the time to at least send an email, because they're going to take some time to get back to you. I also mentioned here in this slide that it's a lot of material condensed in a limited amount of time, and that's no word of a joke. That's something that I learned completely different from high school. Is oftentimes, even coming from high school, I went to a non-semestered school, and I felt that even with that, it changed dramatically when I went to York, mostly because it was the idea of having an exam with so much information, but having a few amount of exams per term, right?
Mhm.
I would have four types of assessments. Like in high school, I'd have a paper, I have a test every single month, I have an assignment due for that same unit. Whereas it's a whole class depicted in 4 months per se, and it's a lot of material in the span of like 3 exams that are like 20% each. So don't get
Yeah.
spooked about that. I just feel like if you
Yeah.
have the time to just keep up with your things and your information and your reading, you got this.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's a lot of information, and the amount of assessments that you have is not a lot in university. So that's definitely something to transition. Okay, so just based on time, I think we're just gonna move into the next one. So our next, it's just really briefly, the studying tips and strategies you would have for our attendees going to university for exams, any online resources that you really love using, and yeah,
For
Mindy can
me,
go ahead.
okay. For me, I'm a planner. So if I don't plan something, I won't do it, or I'll procrastinate. So I always have to make a plan 2 to 3 weeks ahead of exams. Even if that's not when I'm starting to study, at least I know the timeline that I have and when I have to start and when I have to like mentally prepare to start studying for my exams.
Mhm.
And make sure that your study plan is realistic. Don't just be like, oh, I haven't kept up with any of these readings. But I'm gonna study the day before. I'll just study fast. I'll just read fast. It doesn't work that way. So make sure you're really reflecting on what you really need to work on and study, and make sure you're implementing those into your plans. And also at the bottom there, it says check in Quizlet. Quizlet was my holy grail because I just well, first it helps to make the Quizlet flashcards because you're studying in a way when you're doing that, but also I was using it on the go. So on the bus when I commuted to school, or on the bus or whatever, in the car ride, whatever. It was just really useful to have something portable on my phone so that I could just go through flashcards really quick.
That's really good. Thank you. That was really solid advice. Just Hodo, I'm gonna ask you, like, how do you deal with running out of time during an exam? Like it's usually technically it's a decent amount of time, but what if that does happen?
I'd like to scan the test or exam before I begin. When they say, okay, you guys may begin, I don't go straight to the first page. Usually what tends to happen, especially in psychology tests, the first page is always multiple choice. I don't care about that because they're each 1 point per. So I like to allocate my time based on the questions that pertain the most amount of marks. And oftentimes I go to the writing questions that I know a lot about. Sometimes I've entered exams where I don't know anything, right? But I would say the best advice to that is to never leave it blank, because what tends to happen is you may think you don't know something, then you write it down, and then guess what happens? You get at least like a mark or a few marks on it that would then raise your average completely. So I would say never leave anything blank. Even if you're intimidated by the question, try it out. Take a moment and think to yourself, okay, let's look back at when they said this in class. If they haven't said that in class, because that also tends to happen, when did I hear this in the readings? Okay, if not, hey, I may have seen something on TV about this, because like I've heard some theories that I've actually watched on crime shows that are pertaining to psych. So I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about this. Why not do this? So I would say that one other piece of advice I also have when it comes down to test taking and studying is don't psych yourself out with huge words and theories. What tends to happen is, at least with me, is I got intimidated because I used to walk closer to class during the exam time, and I would have other students be like using huge words when it came down to the test, and I was intimidated. I didn't know what they were. When you're studying, I would say humble yourself in a sense that if you don't know the definition of a word when you're doing the reading, highlight it and learn it. I feel the best advice I can give to everyone here is when you are studying and you feel that you know you're ready for the test, it's as though you can explain the content in a way that a child would understand. That is the hardest thing to do that I'm learning so far. As an elementary school, like it's like I may think I know the concept, but if I can't break it down in a way that a child would understand, then I don't know what I'm talking about.
For sure. No, that's really good. Yeah, I find one of my biggest what I love to do is just really teach myself. If I can like really be able to teach it to someone else, I feel like you're pretty prepared. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Mindy and Hodo. So next up, we're gonna move on to our next panel discussion, and it's talking about just classes in general. So, you know, how do you take notes in terms of what do you find is really efficient in terms of like notebook versus iPad versus laptop? What do you find effective? How do you deal with fast talking profs, and just any of those tips and strategies on how to take notes? And so this can go over to Jingyang and Anson. Any of you, whichever one of you guys like to start.
I can get started. So I think that when it comes to note-taking strategies, it'll depend on your personal preference. So for me personally, when I was in really large lectures, I liked to type my notes up just because I found that it was faster. Some profs do speak very quickly, and I found that a lot of my profs actually posted PowerPoints. So it was really easy to just download those and take notes on the bottom section or whatever it may be. Some classes, you might not be allowed to use a laptop though. So in my third year and then going into my fourth year, I know a lot of my classes don't allow laptops, but we have to prepare cases in advance. So in those cases, I would have material prepped, and then I would just handwrite notes based on what I've missed out on.
For sure. Anson, would you like to add
Yeah,
on
for
to
sure. So for me, I'm definitely more traditional. I've been writing my notes by hand since high school. So that's what I kind of did in university. I did find that it was a bit harder because the profs do talk very fast. So one thing I did is I asked them if I could record their lectures, and that way, if I missed any important points, I would just go back on my own and then just rewatch it and like just get any points that I'm missing. One thing I've been finding very interesting is using a tablet of some sort. So all profs will post their PowerPoints. For me specifically, like courses like biology and chemistry, there's a lot of diagrams. So I actually spent a lot of time drawing them. But if you have a tablet, you can just download the slides on there and just annotate them. And that way you don't have to worry about whether you drew the diagram incorrectly or whether you got a point incorrectly. So yeah, I would definitely recommend using some sort of tablet if you like writing. If you like typing, definitely go the typing route.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that was really good advice. Thank you for that. Yeah, I definitely found that how I used to take notes in high school was not good for fast-paced profs. So yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so next up is a really good question. You know, what is your process from properly learning the material, from preparing for the class to writing the test? And any of you guys can go first, Jingyang or Anson.
Do you want?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. Like when I'm studying, the very first thing on my mind is getting that content down. So after class, so let's say I just finished class, I would go home or go back to my dorm, write down any points that I missed or that I haven't elaborated on because like I just didn't have time to write it down. So I would do that first. If I felt like I was missing anything, automatically rewatch the lecture, skim through it. Since the information is still fresh in your mind, you can fast forward a lot faster. After that, on the side, I would create a list of questions. So, you know, usually when you don't know something, usually like if you don't know something, always write it down as a question and always ask someone. You know, sometimes it's not clear to you, but it could be very clear to someone else. So I would have a list of questions where I can ask my friends or the professor later on to clarify on any concepts. And the moment I finish that, it's all about practice. So I'm in a science program, and all the assessments were multiple choice actually. And a lot of the questions, so once you do one or two practice exams, you'll notice a pattern. The question style is very similar. So the more you do, the better you'll get. And so when you actually do the real assessment, you'll have it down. Everything should be like you'll be used to the pattern.
Awesome, thank you. Mindy, sorry, Jingyang, would you like to add on to any of that?
Yeah, sure. So I know you can see on the slide too, I found that a really great way for me to learn was to swap notes with friends in class, just in case we missed out on anything. And I also liked studying groups because you could kind of test each other to make sure everyone understands everything and people can explain concepts as well. Something else that I know Mindy and Hodo touched on earlier too, really use tutorial time wisely. and go to office hours, because if you don't know something, chances are your professors will be more than happy to explain the concept to you. Some of my classes, we also had TAs or professors host review sessions, which were really useful to go to, just because they'll kind of go like high level, everything that they covered, and then answer questions. So if you make a list of questions, that would also be a really great time to kind of bring those up. And you can also go and listen to other questions that people might have, just in case you missed anything in your studying. And also re-listening to lectures is really important if you have a prof that speaks very quickly. Some profs actually don't post their lectures, so if you want to record them on your own, I would go ask them about it, or if they say it's okay. I know some profs are not okay with it, so also be mindful of that. But if that's something you're allowed to do and you think that that would be a good way for you to go back and review, it's also super helpful. Just keep in mind that if you're going back to re-listen to lectures, that's another hour or 2 hours of time that you have to put into your studying. So just keep that in mind if you're going to go back, and manage your time accordingly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think you guys had a really good point, just in the sense of continue to ask questions, right? Like if you don't understand something, don't let it drag along, because as we said, the content is very intense. There's a lot of content, so definitely don't drag. So definitely ask questions, write them on the side. Yeah, definitely. That was really good. Thank you guys. And just, yeah, how do you, kind of going along with that, how do you prepare for your lectures beforehand? Any of you guys can start first.
Sure, I'll go. So I think it's really important to do assign readings and work beforehand. Sometimes if profs do assign work for you to do, it's likely that they won't cover it as much in detail, or they're going to use that as a starting point to continue building off. So if you don't do those readings, you might fall behind in the lecture. And especially so depending on your program, because I'm in business, we had a lot of class contribution as well. So being able to understand the material beforehand and do the work was really important in getting marks for contribution. So being able to build on points or answer questions or come up with other questions that will further the class discussion is really important. And like I mentioned before, if a professor posts PowerPoints, have it downloaded. I think also just getting to your lectures on time. I know it's like sometimes hard, especially if you have morning lectures, but just getting there and like kind of preparing everything is always good. So you're not kind of rushing before the professor starts to talk to grab everything or like get your notes ready and things like that.
Awesome. Okay, just because of time, I'm gonna send it on to Anson just to answer this really quickly. So just like compare it, like what's the difference between high school and university classes, right? On content, speed, or just class size? Just really briefly.
Yeah, so automatically you're going to expect your university classes to be much, much bigger. My psychology class, there's like 700 people, and I'm usually used to like 20 people in a class. So that's one thing. Because your class size is so big, you're in the way you interact, it's going to be much harder to interact with the professor. You're really going to have to go out of your way to office hours or talking to your professors after class, and that takes initiative. In terms of speed, they do go pretty fast. So they don't, like how when you're in a high school class, they usually ask, oh, like, is the speed okay? Like, is the class doing okay? But when you have 700 people, you're not very, no one really cares about you. So like it's much, much faster. And aside from that, aside from class size and speed, I would say the rest is pretty similar.
For sure. Okay, awesome. Thank you. That was very insightful. Thanks. Okay, so I think we're going on to course selection. So our next topic in our panel discussion. So just what are some tips to make a good schedule? And there's back-to-back classes. Would you recommend that early versus late classes? How long should your day be? And also considering the different majors, as I know some like STEM majors are quite intense. And yeah, so that goes to Hodo and Anson, whoever wants to answer first.
I would say the biggest regret I've ever had when I took university in first year was made it seem like it was school every day, Monday to Friday. And the problem with that being is a lot of material, which means every single day you're going to have a lot of readings per class. And in my experience, it was like that. And I had to move that ideology away. It's no longer every day, 8 a.m. per se, and our area would be 8 a.m., 9 a.m. until 3 p.m., organized and facilitated work. If you don't finish the work, it's okay, because tomorrow in class, if you have any extra time, your teacher will provide you with that. It's not like that. Whereas you are your biggest independent, you're there for yourself. In the sense that with the work that is allocated to you, you also need to spread yourself out to have an emotional and intellectual break. Have your break, guys. Watch your TV, watch your Netflix. Netflix was my biggest friend. And I didn't suffer for that, right? Have your filler shows, talk to your friends. Don't drown yourself because you feel, because you're starting this new experience in your life, that you need to be on the ball 24/7. Well, that's not the case. So I say, when it's terms to choosing the courses that are right for you, first thing I recommend you guys to do is look at the requirements that your courses need for first year. Choose those first. Sometimes you may have space to choose electives, sometimes you don't. But I would say, if you do, take advantage of electives that you would be most passionate about. Don't limit yourself because I'm a psychology student, I'm only going to have to take psychology courses and my electives therefore are going to be psychology based. No, right? I went to York and I was fortunate to have courses that were offered to us students that were non-majors. They're called non-majors because there were more so electives that you can go towards if you're passionate about, or if it's a hobby, for instance. There was acting for non-majors, dancing for non-majors. There was art classes, music classes, things that you can take that count for your GPA, but you're also having fun with it along the way. So I'm not sure, Anton, you can comment that.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, definitely I would reach out to upper years just to see what their schedule looked like in first year. Most courses, they say they're pretty consistent throughout the year. So for example, if my chemistry class was at 9 a.m. for this year, the incoming class, it should be the same. So usually they have the same professors and same teachers, at least from what I experienced so far. So definitely see what the traditional schedule looks like, and then alter based on your preferences. For example, if you don't like morning classes, if you can't wake up, then don't take an early class. You can adjust that. And the second part is really know whether you like back-to-back classes versus classes that are spread out. For me personally, I actually wanted back-to-back classes, but because of my application slot, I couldn't do that. So I actually had an hour in between two classes. So there would be two classes, a break, and then two classes. And I actually really liked that because there'd be so much information in class, and then I would have this time where I can just sit down, digest the information, write any notes that I missed before entering a new set of class. So I actually found that really useful.
Definitely.
So
No,
experiment with what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
Anson touched on something very important that I want to reiterate, and it's the idea of 8:30 classes. 8:30 classes in high school is not 8:30 classes in university.
So true.
And every student will go through it. I'm telling you this now, he told you this now, and if you don't listen to us and you go through it, then by all means you heard it first. That's not on us anymore. It's the idea when you go in an 8:30 class in high school, and as a teacher, I do this myself. I know kids are tired, so we start off with slow with you guys. Morning warm up, guys. Morning writing prompt. Tell me about your experiences. You need it sound like that. We jump right in, and I think that, like he said, use your best. You know yourself better than anyone. Or you're getting to know yourself. I took a lot of night classes because I realized I like to sleep in, and it works for me, right? So experiment.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's the amazing thing about university is just the flexibility, and you can really just cater that towards yourself. No, definitely. So thank you guys. Yeah, and then I think this is the last question for course selection. So what is your take on bird courses, just really briefly, just because of time? So yeah, what's your take on bird courses?
I love
and that
it.
goes to Hodo and Anson.
I love the topic of bird courses because I have a story, guys. Here you go. So I went on this Facebook group, York University bird courses. I'm shouting you guys out right there. And I wanted to search bird courses because I had extra electives and time, So I asked and I got a bunch of comments. Oh, take this course. Take this course. It's a bird course. Take it with this professor. It's good. It's easy, right? Anybody who doesn't know the term bird courses, it's the idea of if the course you're going to get an easy A for it. And so I took the course, and it wasn't a bird course at all. Based on this, guys, by the way, the course was economics, and I never took economics in my life, but everybody said it's a, take it with this professor, you're gonna get an A. I took economics and I had no idea what I was talking about. Okay, so my best advice for it is bird courses are never easy for those who are not passionate about it. It can be a bird course, but if you're not willing to put the effort into the course because you're just not motivated to read the readings or even go to class, for instance. By the way, participation is a lot of percent on your overall marks, so you got to show up. So if you're not willing to show up because it's a bird course, it heavily affects your mark, and therefore you got to see in a course that you were told you're going to get an easy A in. Don't play yourself, guys.
Hanson, would you like to touch upon anything?
Yeah, no, I just totally agree with Hodo. You know what, you're gonna do well in anything that you're passionate about. So, you know, just pick wisely. You know, university is a time, especially first year, it's a time to explore what you like and what you don't like. Take a course that you like, or you're passionate or interested about. You'll probably do very well.
Definitely. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. I had a friend who said something really funny. He said that this bird course was like an ostrich because it can't fly and it just can't fly through this course. But anyways, yeah. I totally agree with that. That was really good. Thank you guys. Okay, so going on to our last section, so time management and managing workload. So this goes out to Jing Yang and Mindy. So what are some apps, tips, and strategies to stay organized? Because there is, like university, there's a lot going on. So how am I going to manage this?
For me, I had to write everything down. If I didn't, my mind is dealing with so many different things at once in university, I won't remember to do things. So make sure that you're writing all your deadlines down. And I am a planner, so I like to go into my notes app and plan like literally every hour of my day. Otherwise, I'll be like, yeah, I'll do that thing later. I won't do it. So I'm that type of person that likes to plan, and the notes app for me was the easiest way to do it. Some people write down their planners like with the agenda or with a little journal or something like that. Also, I found that when I was in a study period where it was like exam period or something, I would go into this cycle where I kept like refreshing my social media, and I would see the same page over and over again, but I would keep refreshing every once in a while, and I would notice that I would waste a lot of time doing that. But it was like an unconscious thing. I would just check on the side. So what I did was I would just turn off my phone entirely, and then for my laptop, because I usually use my laptop to study, I would use this thing called a self-control app or application on my MacBook, and you can set like how many hours you want to, I guess, ban or block these social media sites. So if you try and log on or go to the website, it doesn't let you do that. And it kind of helps like psychologically too, because when you see like that blocked page, you're like, oh, I'm doing it again, even though I didn't even realize. So that helped a lot to limit like that unconscious thing and just focus on studying.
Definitely. Would you like
Yeah, I agree with like writing everything down. I tend to use Google Calendar more just so that everything's in one place. And my program uses Canvas, and I'm able to sync it so I can have my class schedule on my Google Calendar as well, and I can plan my additional activities around it. And I find that it's super important to write down everything just so that you understand what your deadlines are and what you need to prioritize when you're trying to stay organized. Make sure that you do that before you take on new commitments, just so that you're not overwhelming yourself as well. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was really solid advice. Thanks. So just going on with that, so just a little bit, pretty similar question, but just how to time manage, you know, in between extracurriculars, your personal time for yourself, and just like all this like studying that you need to do. So yeah, how do you time manage?
I find that for time management, like I mentioned before, understand what your schedule looks like already, and then make sure that if you're taking on any new commitments that it does fit into your current schedule. And I also find that it's really important to understand what to prioritize. So if you have certain things do on certain days, or something might take you a little bit longer, like kind of figure out what, how much time you need to put into that so you can schedule out those times specifically. Even if you're just studying, sometimes what could be helpful is just putting that into your calendar too, so you have a set time for like, I'm definitely going to be using this time to study for this or complete this report or whatever it may be, so that you kind of understand like that if you're not supposed to be doing anything else, and maybe you don't choose to go out with friends or like whatever it may be, get something done.
Definitely. Mindy, do you have any, do you want to touch anything on it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And for managing the workload, as long as you have your plan set out and you're confident that you can achieve those plans, then that's okay. I think you should also remember that for me going to first year, I was like, should I just not do any extracurriculars? Like, am I going to be able to manage everything? Like, will I be too overwhelmed? But I found that actually taking on extracurriculars and planning them out, knowing that I'm able to achieve them, actually helped me with studying, because I was more productive that way. I wasn't like, when I wasn't doing extracurriculars, I felt like I had all the time in the world to study and I would just procrastinate. But when I had other things that I was responsible for, I was like, okay, I have to do this thing tomorrow. I don't have time to study tomorrow, so I got to do it now. And that motivated me to be more productive every day, basically.
Yeah, definitely. In university, you gotta write things down. You gotta stay committed to that. It's not like high school, so you have to definitely. So thank you so much, guys. Going into our next question. So, are there any common mistakes that like when you were a first year student? Was there any common mistakes that you found with time management? Whoever wants to answer first.
I think the biggest mistake for me was being unrealistic with my time management, I guess, and prioritizing the wrong things. And that can go either way. So let's say you have something due tomorrow. Make sure you're going to do that thing and prioritize that instead of going out, for example. But that also goes the opposite direction. So if you've been working on this essay all week and you think that it's done, but you still just want to work on it. I made that mistake in which I was like such a perfectionist that I would work on it for hours and hours and hours, even though it didn't really make much of a difference at the end of the day. Maybe I got like 1 or 2% more from working hours and hours and hours, when maybe I could have done some other work. Maybe I could have taken time off and watched a movie or something and relaxed. So make sure that you are aware of, I guess, what you're doing and how much time things are taking and what really requires time to be taken out of your day.
No, that was really insightful. Thank you. I'm just going to move on to the next question for Jing Yang, if that's okay. So, like, how do you stay motivated and handle stress when it becomes really overwhelming? Because I feel like this is a really common feeling that most first year students have.
Yeah, I think that part of staying motivated and being able to handle stress is also just making sure that you're kind of balancing everything correctly. So like Mindy said, it's not going to be super productive and you're going to feel way more overwhelmed if you just stay on one task for the whole time and you try and spend hours doing it. You might feel more motivated, or maybe you just need to take some time away from writing an essay or studying for something to kind of refresh before going back to it. You will probably be more productive if you do take these breaks and take time for yourself. And honestly, I think that with staying motivated, handling stress, it's not just when you have an exam coming up or an assignment due. It's kind of something that you want to work on throughout the year. And that'll help with handling the stress when it does come to those assignments. So if you stay up to date with all of your lectures and your notes and you're keeping up with your classes and everything, you will feel less overwhelmed when it comes to the time that you have the exam or you have something due, because you should already be more comfortable with the material and you might have less to cram in the last minute.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that advice. So just going into our next question. So how do you study productively and set realistic goals? Also considering that some students, because of the COVID crisis, that you may be staying home studying, and how do I study productively, and how do you make use of these small bits of time to study, whether you're on like the train or the bus or something like that? Anyone who wants to go first, and just pretty briefly because we're tight on time.
Okay, go ahead.
You can, okay, sure. So in terms of studying productively, I think it's something that you need to figure out for yourself. For me personally, I've realized that I study better if I go to a library or I study on campus rather than being in my room at home.
For sure. Yeah, no, thank you guys. Thank you so much for that. Okay, awesome. We reached after the panel discussion. So I'm moving, so we're opening up the chat box. If you guys have any questions, I'm gonna scroll through this and just really open up for the Q&A period. If you guys, I know chat's been popping off, so if you guys have any more questions that you have, please send them in right now, and I'm sure the panelists would love to answer them. I'm just gonna scroll through these. This is so funny. Okay. Okay, so there's one question that came in. What are some good control apps that you have heard of or used yourself? And this is open to all panelists, whoever wants to go first.
Control apps. Well, one I used was self-control. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but self-control on the MacBook. I know that other devices like Microsoft or Android have different ones, but for a MacBook or Apple products, self-control works really well.
One question that someone asked was like, what were like the online lectures and assessments like for you? Because we had like maybe a month of online stuff. So how was that like? Just a bit of insight for that. Whoever wants to go.
Yeah. So week one panelists, you guys can go ahead.
I actually took like an intercession course too. So I did an entire course online, and I think it was probably, it might have been a little bit different for me, but we had Zoom lectures, and we had participation in class. So we would just raise our hand to talk, and they would send us into breakout rooms for activities. Assignments were still pretty much the same. Like if we had group assignments, they just split us into groups, and we would just figure out a way to communicate over video chat. My final exams ended up being longer than usual. So I know some courses did take-home exams, and some courses re-weighted assignments and stuff. I had 9-hour-long exams instead of 4 hours.
I had a 24-hour one. It was so weird. It was truly weird. So yeah, definitely.
It depended on the course, but I think when we go back to school, they're going to be a lot more prepared. I know some schools are doing proctored finals and midterms and things like that. So hopefully they do adjust accordingly and it goes well.
Okay, awesome.
I remember prior to somebody asked how tutorials are like online. I didn't have online classes because of COVID, but I took online classes voluntarily in the past. And what tends to happen from my end, we ended up using Moodle a lot, so Moodle York, and converse via Zoom. So we would have the TA join and conduct a conversation on Zoom. And then further, we would have online discussions. So the online discussions would pertain for marks. And what you would do is the TA would have a question regarding the reading and coincide with the reading, and it's your task to respond to it formally, and then have you respond or reply to another classmate of yours. So that's how I kind of understood it.
Awesome, thank you guys. Okay, Rena, you can go.
Okay, so before you guys hop off, I just wanted to bring this up. So as you can see, this is the beautiful contact slide of our panelists for week one. So please, everyone, go add them on LinkedIn or Facebook on their socials. If you didn't get your question answered today, or you want to go more in depth on some things, I'm sure they'd love to answer. So you guys can feel free to add them on social media. This is their social media. So go ahead and do that. And I also just wanted to present an external opportunity for all our attendees. So I know a lot of you guys are in high school. Either you just finished high school and you're going into university, or maybe you're in grade 11 or 10. So this is actually a hackathon opportunity that is taking place actually this weekend. And for those of you who don't know what a hackathon is, it's basically like 24 hours. You don't have to work 24 hours straight, but just like you're able to work on a software problem. And it's really fun. You don't need any experience prior to it. There's a lot of mentors who will be there for you. So yeah, I think that it'll be a really great learning opportunity. So you can go on sethacks.ca, like their website, to sign up. So I definitely recommend. I went to my first hackathon this year. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm so sorry, like there were some technical complications near the end, at the beginning as well. Really sorry about that. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you to all our panelists for taking the time and sharing such great insights. I hope everyone was able to take away something from today. And yeah, so thank you guys. If you guys are staying on for the second part of University of Toronto, just stay on for a few minutes. We're gonna start in a little bit. I know we're running late, but just a few more minutes. And yeah, I'll let you guys make the switch right now. So thank you again to our week 1 panelists. Go add them on social media so you guys can follow up with them if you need to.